Hi guys, welcome to today's session, how to stop wasting time and money on book marketing that does not work. I'm going to be doing this session with you today. My name is Dewji. I'm the co-founder of I Am Self-Publishing and the creator of the new T.R.A.C.K author marketing course. Before we get started, I've got a little bit of housekeeping to go through with you guys. I'm going to be putting quite a lot of value into this session today, like loads of actionable content, but there's actually a lot more than I've got time to give you today because we've got a bit of a time constraint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by going through where I see authors go wrong. I work with authors on a daily basis and I see a lot of the common mistakes or the common tripwires that authors fall into. So I'm going to go through some of those so hopefully you can avoid falling into that common trap. And then I'm going to go and move on into what I've developed as a 5-step plan for creating a bulletproof marketing plan that's going to work for any book in any genre, any type of author. It's all about finding out what's going to work for you and your readers. So that's going to be the loose structure of it. But like I say, there's a lot more that I want to share with you guys than I've actually got time for today. So what I've done is I've created a download for you that goes along with this session. And what that's got in it is it's got all of the key points and take homes and everything like that I talk about. Plus there'll be points where I'll refer to an additional resource or a link or something like that that I don't really have time to go into fully today. So all of that stuff will be in the pack. Plus I'm going to chuck an extra couple of bonuses in there that I'll mention as we go along. So that's basically the structure for today's session. So make sure you stay to the end so you get those bonuses and keep an eye out for that download below. So why should you guys listen to a thing that I've got to tell you about marketing books? Well, to give you a little bit of a background about me, my career started at a huge magazine publisher in sales and marketing before working in advertising with some of their bigger spending clients. That gave me a really good grounding because I was given the essential sales and marketing training where you learn these fundamental principles, which obviously I had to employ with trying to get people to buy magazines. And then when I started working on the client side, I was actually helping them selling everything from washing machines to clothes to watches to heavy site machinery. And what that does is it shows you how you can manipulate the same core fundamental processes to whatever the product is that you're trying to sell and whoever the audience is that you're trying to reach with that. The process behind it is the same, even if the output of the plan is very different. Now, after I worked in sales and marketing advertising with the magazine publisher, about 7 years ago, I set up a self-publishing company with my sister. As you can imagine, our mother is insanely proud of us and she tells everybody that she meets. And contrary to popular belief, our biggest achievement isn't just that we haven't managed to rip each other's heads off yet, but we've actually picked up some awards along the way. We've worked with some incredible authors, we've published some fantastic titles, and we've enjoyed quite a nice bit of success with helping authors launch their work. Now, as you can imagine, in that sort of time frame of 7 years, the landscape of self-publishing has changed a lot. It's evolved a lot. You know, it was a very emerging market 7 years ago, you know, quite unregulated. There was a lot of cowboys around. There was a lot of tools that kind of came up and has since disappeared. The quality of printing and distribution over those years has just vastly improved. And what we've actually seen during that time is the authors that have been a success, whether that was 6, 7, 5 years ago or more recently, they've all got these same things in common. So the tools and techniques that you use, those things kind of come and go. You know, these are the mechanics of marketing. Obviously, people trying to sell stuff 20 years ago, they didn't have social media the way that we did. But if you strip back their marketing plans to the bare bones, they would have been getting everything right back then. The same things that people will be getting right now. And I think that puts me in quite a unique position to be able to kind of teach you what I know about sales and marketing, because not only have I sold lots of different products in lots of different markets outside the world of kind of books and magazines. As a publisher, I've seen real world data from hundreds and hundreds of books that we've launched. You know, not like an author who's maybe got a handful of books themselves in maybe one or two genres that they've published. You know, I've been involved in publishing titles in pretty much every genre imaginable, and I've seen what it takes for a book to succeed regardless of genre. I've seen the steps that you need to go through to make the success of self-publishing. But at the same time, I see week in, week out, authors making the same common mistakes, or kind of authors falling down the same traps. And largely, you know, what this whole session is about, I see authors spending time on the wrong things and money on the wrong things when it comes to marketing. And that's what today's session is really all about. I want to make sure that you guys are not making these same common mistakes that I see authors making all the time. But kind of not making mistakes is only half the battle. You still need to replace that with a good path to follow to get yourself to success. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Now, before I get into the marketing side of things, I wanted to start by using it's actually one of my nan's favourite phrases, and that is that you can't polish a turd. What I mean by that within self-publishing is that marketing is kind of like it's the last section that you need to get right of lots of other sections that all have to work together in harmony. And those are things like, you know, your cover design, the editing, the storytelling. If it's non-fiction and you're trying to explain a new concept or teach somebody something, is a layperson going to really understand that? If you've used, you know, elements of design within the book, do they complement the content? There's a lot that's going on that's going to determine the success of your book once you get it into somebody's hands. So if you haven't gone through and done that necessary due diligence with making sure that your content is as perfect as it can be and that it's in the right distribution networks and all of that sort of stuff, then you're doing yourself a disservice by pumping time and energy into marketing it, because once you get it out there into people's hands and they've bought it and they're about to read it, that's quite a hard thing to do. And if you've done that and they've put their trust into you, perhaps as a first-time author, and you've let them down because there's mistakes in it or that, you know, it doesn't read very well, then they're very unlikely to buy anything from you ever again, and they're probably quite likely to review it poorly, which is going to have a knock-on effect on everything else that you are trying to do. So we've put together a guide for you guys, which is called the 7 Steps to Bestseller Success, which covers absolutely everything that you need to get right for your book to be a success, not just the marketing side of things. And I'm going to give that to you guys at the end of this session. So hang on to the end for that, because marketing on its own will not be enough to guarantee the longevity of your author career. It's an incredibly important part, but it needs to work in harmony with everything else. And today's session is really kind of assuming that you've already got all of those other things right. So it's kind of hypothetically, you've nailed every other possible aspect of self-publishing, and it's just the marketing that you need to sort out. I think one of the biggest things for me, obviously working on the publisher side of things, is the authors that we see. You know, we know that the time and the energy and the effort that they've put into their books, you know, we've read them, we've edited, we've seen the cover designs. Like, we know that this is a good book, we know it's well written, we know it's got a great cover, we know it's got a great description. But they're just letting themselves down at this final hurdle where they just can't seem to get themselves into gear to follow a structured plan to get their book out there into the hands of readers who, you know, we're confident that if they were to get it into the hands of those readers, that those readers would absolutely love it. Now, given the ease and speed that books and information and messages and tweets and everything else can be distributed globally, like so instantly, it genuinely has never been easier to be a self-published author. And by that I don't mean that it's a walk in the park, because obviously there is a lot more competition at it, but in terms of all the tools that you have at your disposal, for example, you can, within seconds of finishing this webinar, go and directly talk to somebody that you've never met in New Zealand about an interest that you both have in common. That just wasn't something that people could do years ago. Like, you have all of these tools at your disposal, and they're not difficult to use. You just have to know which ones to use and when to use them and how to use them. Now I want to kick things off by asking you guys a very serious question. When it comes to your book, do you worry that nobody's ever going to find out about it and that it's just going to be left to gather dust in some corner of the internet somewhere? Like, you know that you need to get the marketing side of things right, but you know, you don't have infinite amounts of time and money to spend doing that. Like, you need it to work without having to remortgage the house or never speak to your kids again. So let's look at some common book marketing myths. Selling a truckload of ebooks, it doesn't require a huge budget. It doesn't require years of experience, or even for you to be a really outgoing person with buckets of confidence. It doesn't require you to be that techie. I think a lot of authors get put off by how technical some of the areas of marketing would be, but really it's in the companies that make these tools best interest to make them as user-friendly as possible. So with a bit of time and effort put into setting a few things up and a bit of strong direction, it's really not that difficult. You don't need to be a social media whiz kid or expert. You know, I hear the excuse all the time, oh, I'm too old for social media. Do you know what? I'm only 31. I didn't grow up with social media. Like, it wasn't a thing when I was a kid. I didn't grow up with it. I've had to learn it. I've had to use it for my business. And even nowadays, you don't even need to have a really long or impressive list of contacts or a massive network. You know, that's maybe the way that the publishing industry used to work, that, you know, you'd have to take journalists out for dinners and stuff like that. You know, that's just such an old and broken model. It really is quite easy to promote your book and get it out into the hands of your readers if you can put yourself onto the right track. But sometimes finding that right path, or just being confident in the fact that you're following the right path, can be the hard part. Now, I speak with authors all the time, and I do see some common, say, personality types, or sort of common pigeonholes that you can kind of put most authors into, and I'd be interested to know which one of these you guys might fall into. So the categories of author that I would say, and this is kind of in terms of their approach towards marketing their books, is first off, hit and hopers. Now, these authors, that they've clued up a little bit. You know, maybe they've heard doing a blogging or social media is a good idea, but they don't really have a very joined up approach to it. You know, yeah, they might have written a couple of blog posts, but then they haven't really done much beyond that. They're just hoping that of all of the millions and millions of blog posts in the world, somebody finds them somehow. You know, there's no joined up thinking behind it and plan to sort of follow up. How am I going to get people interested in that? Or once they do see it, what's the outcome of it going to be? It's like trying to catch fish by teeing up some golf balls on the beach and smashing them out into the ocean, you know, in the hope that one of them's going to knock a fish on the head. It's not the best way to catch fish. I don't know what you guys know about fishing or golf, but if that's how you're doing either of them, you're doing them wrong. You could be out there for hours, and it might seem like you've been really busy and you've been doing a lot, but you won't be that surprised when you come home without a fish at the end of the day. It's just a waste of time. You know, you can end up thinking that you're doing a lot of things that should be working, and then getting frustrated when you're not getting any results. But really, it might have been because you weren't focusing your energy in the right direction, or it might be that the one thing that you did on its own was good, but it needed 3 or 4 other things with it to make it really pay off and get your sales flowing. So that's the first group of people, the hit and hopers. The next group of authors are the run out of steamers, and I really don't understand the run out of steamers, and it's one I do honestly see these guys quite often. It's people that are just so enthusiastic with everything to do with the book during the production stage. They're really into the cover design, the editing, like all of this. They really enjoy that sort of process, but as soon as it comes to the marketing, they just run out of steam. I don't know if it's they're intimidated by marketing or it's because they don't know what to do, but they just seem to really kind of lose interest and almost be kind of happy with the handful of sales. And I think it's such a waste, like I said before, the energy and effort that goes into creating a book. And this is kind of what a book's made for, is to be read. So I just don't understand why you wouldn't educate yourself and invest in yourself a little bit to try and push your book over the line, just to get it out there into the hands of readers, really. The next type is the social media vortex, I call this one. I'm a little bit guilty of this one sometimes, and I know a lot of authors are. And this is where you can kind of jump onto social media with every intention of doing some marketing or trying to push your book out a little bit, but the next thing that you know, kind of half an hour, an hour has gone past and you haven't really done much. I think especially with authors, I think the danger for authors is they just end up meeting a lot of other authors on Twitter. They don't actually use it to engage with their readers and actually try and push more books. And I do understand that one. It's an easy trap to fall into, because I think social media in this day and age, it is the biggest time suck that we have. It's, if you don't use it efficiently and if you don't approach it with a plan, if you've got a plan for your social media, which is to log in for X minutes a day, and while you're in there, you've got a checklist of things that you need to do, and you just get in, do those and get out, then it's amazing. Especially if you're targeting your attention in the right way, it can really pay off with you. But it is a slippery slope and you can end up spending a lot of time and not getting much back out of it. The next group is the information paralysis, and these authors are ones that try to research everything to perfection and end up having a little bit of knowledge about lots of different areas, but it's all in a very haphazard approach. It's not structured, and they've kind of overthought things to the point that now they're kind of months past when they wanted to start doing some marketing, and they haven't actually done anything yet because they've just been researching. Research is important. You need to educate yourself, but you also need to actually do marketing as well. And I've seen a number of authors that they've just taken a little bit of advice from lots of different places, and they're not really following one kind of structure, and it's just got them a bit overwhelmed and a bit confused, and they're not actually doing any marketing for their books. The next group is the ostriches, or the throw money at it. And these authors, they're just not interested in marketing at all. They still think that it's possible to be a successful author that just writes books. They don't want to have anything to do with any part of the process involving kind of buying their books. But the reality of today's market, that I'm sure any of the speakers today will tell you, is that it's just not possible to do that anymore. You have to get involved. At the very least, you need to clue yourself up on how it all works. If you're the kind of person that's just going to throw money at it, you're the kind of person who's going to get ripped off, because you haven't educated yourself about what exactly it is that your book needs to succeed. Okay? If you know what it needs to succeed, you can still then make the executive decision that you don't want to do that, but at least then you know how you can instruct a freelancer or a marketing professional, because you already know what you need. If they can then turn around and say to you, oh, you need X, Y, and Z, and it's going to cost you this many £1,000. If you don't really know what they're talking about, you're just going to say, yeah, great. So that is a very dangerous position to be in. The next group of authors I see are the magpies. Now, the magpies, they've got all the motivation in the world, but they lack a little focus. They want their book to do well, but they're too interested in finding the next latest greatest thing, that they attention gets swayed quite often. They'll half start a lot of things and they won't really follow anything through to the end, which is a dangerous position to be in, because you're just going to end up with a real haphazard marketing campaign with lots of half executed plans left, right and centre, and no real follow through on any of the ideas that would have been good if you had have carried on with them. Then we've got the nervous newbie, which I can completely understand. If you're very new to marketing, it can seem daunting if you don't know where to start, or you have absolutely no knowledge of what needs to be done to get your book into the hands of its readers. And they're just a little bit too scared almost. They're very timid. They're too scared to kind of put themselves out there. And as like I said before, you don't have to be overly confident to go out there and be a good online salesman or a good marketer. It's not like, the days of old where you like used car salesman, really sleazy kind of overconfident attitude. If anything, that's going to put people off. I think what social media has done, it's given birth to the rise of the regular celebrity, people who are just like normal people. And that's why people like them. The people that are best at marketing this, because they're fantastic at storytelling, or they're just really, really genuine. If you're just trying to pretend to be someone that you're not, then it's never going to work for you. Plus, there's so many mediums now where if you're doing stuff on camera, you can pre-record it until you get it right. Or, you can just write, use your strengths as a writer. You can communicate with people via email. You can write blog posts. There's so many things that you can do that you shouldn't be put off if you're just not that outgoing a person. So those are the main types of authors that I do come across most often. There are other types of authors that struggle with marketing for all sorts of reasons. People, their lives get in the way, kids, this sort of thing. That's completely understandable. And also we get authors, maybe once bitten, twice shy. They've tried certain things before, or, they've had their money taken by someone, so they're a bit reluctant to go down that path again. But all of these different types of authors are all struggling for a different reason. They've all got one major thing in common, and that is the lack of an easy to follow, comprehensive, structured plan. So if you're feeling like, you don't know where to start, or that you're trying but you're not getting things right, that's completely normal, completely understandable. It's not your fault. Given the cluster bomb of hype and misinformation that there is out there, it genuinely is a wonder that we're still able to read, let alone sell any books. I do feel really sorry for these authors, but a lot of them go kind of blindly headfirst into marketing, hoping that they'll pick it up as they go along. In most cases, it's usually just that nobody has ever sat down with them and been through step by step what a good book marketing plan looks like. Generally what I see across the board from the authors that I work with is that there's not a lack of motivation. They all want to do well, but they're just kind of struggling with putting things into place. And there's a lot of effort there, but I think when you don't have the right plan behind you and you've got motivation and you're willing to put in effort, it leads to what I referred to earlier as just kind of being busy. It's where it seems like you're putting a lot of energy and time into your marketing, but it's not really doing anything other than keeping you busy, which is not ideal, right? So that's where the T.R.A.C.K system comes in. It's simple, it works, and you can use it to create a bulletproof marketing plan for any book. It's not going to give everybody exactly the same plan to follow. It's a system of creating a plan that's going to work for you and your readers individually. It's going to play on your strengths and to the needs and wants of your readers. So you can use this system if you've written a non-fiction book on clay pigeon shooting, or if you've written a noir crime novel. It's the same process of being able to research, identify and connect with your readers. Now, I've worked in sales and marketing for quite some time, and what I found is a lot of courses and programs out there lacked was a focus on the fundamentals. With things changing so rapidly, there's always going to be a course on the latest this or the new it's that, like whether it's SEO or keywords or Facebook ads or whatever. But these companies like Google and Amazon and Facebook, they're constantly changing the goalposts. So
it might even be that platforms could shift to such a degree that what you've learned in these courses teaching you the newest tricks becomes outdated very quickly. Whereas if you understand the fundamental principles behind it and how that tool fits into the overall picture, it's much easier to see how it can be replaced. And that's really why I came up with T.R.A.C, to help authors understand where and how everything works with each other. These tools and techniques will only work for you if you fully understand how they fit in with the whole campaign. And usually, these tools and techniques, particularly online tools and pieces of software and things like that, they're only as good as the information that you put into them when you're setting them up and how you manage that follow-up process afterwards. So, what is T.R.A.C? T.R.A.C is actually an acronym which stands for Target, Root, Attract, Convert, and Keep. So the first part of T.R.A.C is targeting, and this is all about finding the right people for your book, the people who are most likely to buy it. In advertising, we have a phrase called wastage, which is basically if you are paying to put an advert somewhere, you want to make sure that the highest percentage of those people are likely to buy it, because anybody who is not interested in it that sees your advert, you've paid to show it to somebody who wasn't interested. So that was a complete waste. And that's a good concept to keep in mind when you're doing any kind of online marketing or advertising. Is there going to be a percentage of waste? If there is, how high is that percentage? If that percentage is quite high, then it's probably not the right place to be doing it. And this is honestly where I see most authors trip up. They spending a lot of time and money on advertising or marketing that's not going out to the right people. You could have the best message in the world, but if it's landing on deaf ears that aren't interested in your product, then it's been a complete waste of time. And what I actually find that a lot of authors are guilty of is trying to cast their net far too wide. It's quite a common misconception that you would think, yeah, the wider I cast the net, then the more people are likely to hear it. But in reality, it dilutes your message. And what I tell authors all the time is you don't actually need as many readers as you think. Think how many millions of people there are in the world. If to start off with, you're thinking, I need to sell 1,000 books, you can probably do that in a very concentrated niche. So say, for example, you've written a crime thriller and you're of the opinion that it's got really wide appeal. Any man or woman over the age of 16 will enjoy this book. That's great. But within the wide group of men and women age 16 plus, there are so many different subgroups, each of which would represent at least 1,000 readers to you. So you need to start by drilling down and focusing your attention on maybe 1, 2 or 3 different types of people. And for those types of people, I would say even go down even further and just come up with one stereotypical person that represents that set of people. So, for example, crime thriller, very wide appeal. I can instantly think of a lot of different types of people that would be interested in reading a crime thriller, none of which particularly have anything in common. So just start off with one group, and I'm going to say policemen in Scotland in their mid-40s living around the main cities. And then drill it down even further so you can just come up with like a visual representation of one person that fits that profile. And then you're only really concentrating your efforts on marketing towards one person, but that one person represents a larger set of people. So my key points for you guys to take away from this around targeting are really think about who you're marketing to, limit the waste as much as possible, and don't try and cast your nets too wide. Focus your attention on a smaller group of people first, and preferably within that group try and just come up with one person that represents that group, so that you feel like you're only now marketing to one person, not you've got to try and turn the whole world onto your book. It's actually a really interesting article and an interview as well that goes with it by a guy called Kevin Kelly called 1,000 True Fans, and his philosophy is that for any product or business to succeed, you only really need 1,000 true fans. And by true fan, he means somebody that kind of like a boy band fan, who will follow you around the world, who will buy anything that you make just because you made it. And it's a really, really interesting article, and it does put, the scale of promotion into perspective a little bit. And I'm going to put a link to that interview and article in the download so that you guys can watch that later. Okay, so next up is route. You might have heard some other people around author marketing calling this a funnel or something like that, but this is really, it's more about a route for me than a funnel, because once you've done your targeting and you know who this person is who's going to be interested in reading your book, you have to plan what their route is from where they are now, which is going on about their daily life, not having a clue who you are, to purchasing a book that you've written. And generally, across selling absolutely anything, the kind of 4-stage process of a buying decision is awareness, interest, consideration, and purchase. Now, those things can all happen instantly, within the space of 5 seconds of each other, or they might take some time. So you just need to consider your reader. It might be that happens all on Amazon. If that's the case, you need to think about how you're categorizing your book, where that person might be looking on Amazon or on search engines, or it might be that they're going to need a little bit more persuasion. It might be that you need to advertise to them. And if you were going to advertise to them, where would that be? What would you say? How would you do that? How would you follow up with them if they didn't purchase it the first time? And I think where most people go wrong with the sort of planning of this stage is that they don't put their customer first, or they don't put their readers' wants or needs at the forefront. They're just thinking that that they want to sell books, and I think that's where it can become a bit disjointed and not really yield that many results, because you have to think about the customer's journey. If you focus on your own goals opposed to what your customer wants, you're going to end up coming across really pushy and as if you don't have their best interests at heart. And the harder that you push, the more resistance you're going to get. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. It's Newton's third law. Just think of it like this: politicians lie, the sun rises in the east, and people will resist your pressure. And in this dynamic of trying to sell books, resisting your pressure is just not buying it. But people will rarely resist someone who's trying to meet their needs, wants, or desires. So my actionable tip for you guys within planning this section out would be to make a list. If you yourself were going to go and buy a book by an author that you'd never heard of before, what would you need to be made comfortable of before you bought it? What information would you require about the author, about that story, before deciding to purchase? The goal of the funnel, or of planning out this route, is to try and deal with as many of those objections before they arise. So if you think about those 4 things: awareness, interest, consideration, and purchase, at each one of those stages, what would you need to know? Or what would you need to be interested in something? If you were buying fiction, would you first need to see how good a writer that person was? If it was non-fiction, would you need an example of them explaining a portion of that? Just have a think about what your reader might need before they go through that process. So the next part of track is attract. And this is where you know the type of people that you want, because you've figured that out in your targeting, and you've planned the route that you want that person to take. And this is where you need to go and find them. This is where you need to go and encourage those people that will be interested in your book to start that journey. They need to begin that route. So use is where you need to go. You need to go to the source. And I think where most people go wrong with this particular stage is that they don't connect the traffic sources that they're trying to get to their target audience. So for example, one of the things I get asked all the time by authors about reviews, about how do I get a magazine to review me, how do I get featured here, featured there. Getting a review from a mainstream media outlet, the only thing it's good for is a bit of ego massaging and a bit of social proof in terms of putting a stamp on something that says these people said it was good, so it must be good. It won't generate that much sales for you on its own. You can't rely on the exposure from that particular piece to generate all the sales for you. Getting that rubber stamp would be great, but then you still actually need to go out there and market the book and yourself, so that when you put it in front of people or when you're trying to convince people to buy it, first you need to make them aware of it, but having that stamp might help you with the convincing stage. But don't think that getting a couple of reviews is the be all and end all and is going to solve your problems. I've seen over the years lots of authors that we've worked with, they'll get a review in a newspaper. Let's say it's in the arts section of The Guardian on a Tuesday, buried in the arts section under book reviews. There might be thousands of people that bought The Guardian that day, but if you're thinking about this as, say, like a funnel or a route, yeah, you've got the people who bought it. Of those, what percentage of those got to the arts section? Of those, what percentage of them got to the book review section? Of those, which of them read your book review? And of the people that read it, which ones bought it? You can easily see how that quickly whittles down to not resulting in that many sales. Plus, that book review will soon be yesterday's news, quite literally. And getting The Guardian to review is really, really hard. It's a very difficult thing to do. So if you're focusing your energy on media reviews, there are much, much, much better things that you can be doing with your time. So what my tip for you guys within this would be is to really, really think about the niche section of your readership, okay? So if we're thinking about John again, and you should always be thinking about John, he's a policeman in Scotland. Think about his lifestyle. He's probably quite busy and probably works shift work. I would imagine that he probably gets most of his news from his phone when he's on the go. There are police magazines that he will keep an eye on. He'll probably be very interested in local councils and governments in his area, because that will have an effect on maybe funding that will affect his job, or local events that are coming up that are going to need policing. And there'll also be Facebook groups for like Police Scotland or Police Edinburgh that he's probably quite likely a member of. So instantly you've got lots of ways that you can identify where he is actually focusing his time on, and where you're more likely to catch him than just if you got a review in The Guardian that would happen to be in a newspaper shop that he walked in. He probably wouldn't even pick that up. So you've completely missed the mark if you're not focusing your traffic towards your target audience. So the penultimate stage of T.R.A.C.K is convert. This is all about, once you've got the attention of a potential reader, how are you going to convince them to buy it? Usually this is in the way that you say things or that you structure things within your marketing. So copywriting is a big part of advertising or marketing. This is the way that you write your pitch or your advert. There are so many different ways that can be done. When you're writing copy, I think it's always good to try and focus on two things. One is storytelling, and the other is evoking an emotion. If it's non-fiction, what is my life going to be like once I've got this information? What am I going to be able to do with it? Focus on the benefits to me of knowing what you put into this book. If it's fiction, what emotions am I going to feel whilst reading this book? Is it going to take me back to somewhere? Is it going to make me feel like I'm on a beach in Italy? You need to get these things across in your copy so that people can fall in love with the idea of owning your product or reading your book. With the structuring side of things, you're looking at web pages and landing pages and things like that. It's where you place buttons or images that can have a real impact on whether people are interested straight away and they want to carry on reading and finding out more and eventually buying, or they just lose interest because they weren't given the information that they needed straight away. Or if, we've all been on websites that are difficult to navigate and then you just lose interest in them because you can't get the information that you wanted from them, so you just move on. And I think where a lot of authors go wrong is they might just do their landing page or do their website and then tick that off the list and say, oh, I've done that. That's one thing I need to do. And they'll just leave it at that, whereas it might not be the best performing version of that landing page or of that web page, or of an email or a newsletter that you're sending out to your list, or even of that advert. And there's so much software out there now that makes it easy for you to do something called a split test or an A/B test. And this is where you can run simultaneously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many you like, versions of essentially the same thing. So the same page or the same advert in the same place. You can change one element of it. So you could say, okay, I'm going to try this advert exactly the same. I'm going to try it in red, blue, yellow and green. And then just push them all out. Everything else is the same on it. The audience settings and all of those things. And you can just get the results back. See, oh, okay, the green one's performing a lot better than the other ones. I'll can the other ones and roll on with the green. So a couple of things I'm going to give you to help with these two things. In the download, I've put a list of some good and bad words to use in your copy. There's some words in the English language that, you know, we like to hear that make us feel safe. There's other words that maybe are a little bit more aggressive and make people a bit standoffish and less likely to convert. So I've put a list of all of those in the download so you can maybe see if you're using some of the bad ones, you can replace them with some of the good ones in your current copy. And there's also a link to a really good book that is called 108 Split Test Winners. And this is from a guy called Russell Brunson, who owns a marketing company called ClickFunnels. He's one of the big marketing gurus of our time. And basically this shows all of the different variations of split tests that they've done and that they've seen and the impact that those have. So even though they're not all related to selling books, it will give you an idea of just the scope that changing a little thing can have on the success of a landing page or a website or any part of the sales funnel. So if you grab that download, there's going to be links to both of those in there. The book, I've actually managed to get a link where you can get that for free as well. So I think you just have to pay a few dollars for the shipping for it. But you should definitely check that book out and make sure you try and incorporate some of those words in your copy. Okay, so the fifth and final stage of the T.R.A.C. process is keep. This is all about keeping your readers. So if you're planning on writing any other books or making a career out of being an author, you're going to need to keep your happy readers and you're going to need to keep them happy. And you're going to need to keep them interested in you between your books. If you don't have a book that's out straight away, you're going to need a strategy for how to keep them engaged. Now, the best way to stay in touch with a reader is on an email list. You know, social media, you don't own those lists and you're not fully in control of them. So the best thing to try and do is to get them on an email list. And the best way of doing that is at the back of your book. Think of something that you can offer them at the end of your book that would make them want to give you their email address in return for that. So if it's non-fiction, you're giving them some further guides. Maybe there were some materials or worksheets that went along with the book that you could put into a download that they could take at the end of the book. Or if it's fiction, maybe there's a diary of a main character or a novella or a spin-off story that you can give them for free. Think about what you can offer somebody who's just read and enjoyed your book so that they'll give you their email address. You know, we worked with an author a couple of years ago who hadn't thought this side of it through and just kind of went gung-ho on marketing book one. And it did fantastically well. It sold thousands and thousands of copies. But it was book one in a trilogy. And then the problem that he had when he went to launch the second book was that he had no way of contacting all those people that had read and enjoyed book one to let them know that the second one was out. So he was almost starting again from scratch. If he'd have got all of their email addresses, they probably would have been biting his arm off for that second book because the book one was reviewed really, really well. So everybody who was reading it was really enjoying it. So it's a situation that you don't really want to find yourself in. And I think where authors go wrong, it's a bit of that short-term mentality. You know, they're so focused on getting this book done that it's easy to kind of forget about the future, but you don't really want to find yourself in that position. And the big tip for that is really just use the back of your book. It's the perfect time to ask for their email address because they've just finished the book, they've just enjoyed it, and you're going to dangle a carrot in front of them, offering them something juicy. So those are the 5 stages of the T.R.A.C. process, and you can really use these to create a marketing plan that's going to work for
honestly, for any book. It doesn't matter whether it's fiction, non-fiction, or a children's book or anything like that. You know, you're still going to need to do your research into the traffic to find out who the people who are most likely to buy your book is. You're still going to need to plan that route that they're going to take. Remember the awareness, interest, consideration and purchase stages of planning that route. You're going to have to figure out where you're going to find these people and how to attract them. And then once you've attracted them and got their attention, how are you going to convert them? Like, what are you going to do to convince them to buy that book? And then once they have bought that book, how are you going to hold on to them to make sure that you don't let them go? So that if they have read it and they did enjoy it, you can keep a dialogue going with them and promote and sell your future titles to them. Now, I do apologise if I went a bit fast at any point today. We were constricted by time and there's so much that I had to go through just to get through all the 5 stages of the T.R.A.C. process and, you know, highlight a lot of the areas where I see authors wasting a lot of their time and money on things that aren't really working for them too well. So you might be feeling a little bit like this right now, and especially with all of the other sessions that are going on in the event, you might have loads of different notes, and when you look back at it in a couple of days, it might all seem a little bit overwhelming and not really sure where to start with it all, and that's when you're in quite a dangerous position. Remember I spoke earlier about the information paralysis authors. This is where, you know, you can feel like you've got so many things but you're not really sure which direction to go in and which directions to start. So that's why we put this download for you, because it really structures my notes in the same way that this session was, and it's giving you some extra stuff that you could go away. So if you just focus on one bit at a time and go through it systematically, hopefully you'll be able to find a little bit of calm and work through it in your own pace. And don't forget to get that download. We've chucked some extra bonuses in there for you as well. There's all of the notes plus some extra tips and tricks from all of the points that I went through today. Plus we've also put in there the 7 Steps to Bestseller Success ebook and a money off voucher in case you need to use any of our services in the future. But we don't want you to feel like you're drowning, so if you do need any help with this or any other parts of self-publishing or marketing, you know, you can email me directly. My email address is ali, A-L-I, @iamselfpublishing.com. And if you would like some more details about our T.R.A.C. Author Marketing course, which is the program that we've developed using these 5 core principles, showing you how to be more efficient with your time and money, what you need to do to build and develop your author platform, create a bulletproof marketing plan and execute it to perfection, as well as some awesome marketing hacks to automate most of the process so you can focus more time and energy on writing more books. It will literally save you thousands of dollars, countless headaches, and give you back the months which you otherwise would have lost on dead-end marketing. We're actually running a massive discount for you Alliance of Independent Authors members at the moment. For the super early bird sign up for the course, we're offering it to you for $197 instead of the normal $497. Plus we've chucked a load of extra bonuses in there, so make sure you head over to iamselfpublishing.com/T.R.A.C and you check those out. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you found it really useful, and I hope you've got some advice that you can go out there and actually action. I don't want this stuff to just sit in your notebooks. I want it to make a change in your marketing campaigns. Do stay in touch with me. I do want to know how you get on, and I wish you all the best.